Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, in another series of videos where I'll be teaching you Crusader Kings 2. In today's episode, we're going to be focusing on our vassals, and primarily, how to keep them happy. So, I chose this save file, again with the Hungarian Empire from a few episodes ago, and actually, I believe in all but one of the episodes I used this, or showcased this save file. So, I have picked this character in particular, though, for a particular reason. Namely, his father died of cancer at the age of 39, so relatively young, but not that young. There was a short regency period, and he is now 16 and ready to rule. Problem is, his vassals are probably not going to like him all too much. He's a new ruler, he just got there, and his stats aren't that good. He has 8 diplomacy, which is right around the only redeeming factor this character has. So, before we get murdered, let's pick an ambition and pick a focus. Considering our diplomacy is somewhat decent, I think that is something we should focus on. Now, we can't pick carousing because of our traits, but we can pick family. Increases health and diplomacy, so we can get our diplomacy to 10 functionally, and yeah, that'll help. So let's start off with that. But the other reason why I took this particular character and this starting date was the mess that he sort of inherited. Namely, he's at cap for vassal limit. He has way more. I just realized this isn't pronounced demesne. But I've been pronouncing it demesne for 5 years. So, yeah, I'm not just realized, but I realized that when I finished recording the last episode. I'm like, hold on, that's not demesne, that's domain. But hey, like I've heard a lot of people pronounce it demesne as well, so I latched onto that and it stuck. For like 6 years apparently. So. At any rate, regardless, he has way more domain or demesne than he realistically should, and apart from a load of money, he really isn't in that great of a condition. Bearing in mind, his father had something like 80 ducats per month being paid to him, so all in all, not a terrific situation. He's in charge of a large empire which could potentially crumble if left unmanaged. Let's take a look at how much his vassals hate him. Not a lot, but, well, they don't really revere him either. So, let's begin. How to keep your vassals happy? Well, one of the first questions I've been asked is, how do I keep track of my vassals? How does that work? I keep losing track of who's where and what. Well, really the map's there to show you that. You can see the sort of vassal borders, and you can see sort of click here and navigate to the vassals you're looking for. Are you looking for just the guys under you? But one of the best ways of navigating is through the vassals tab right here. This is how I sort out pretty much everything. You can sort them by rank, name, the amount of tax they pay, or opinion. The first and the last there being probably the most important ones. So, good news first, I suppose. And the good news being, the King of Andalusia really likes me. The Queen of Sardinia and Corsica really likes me as well. But that's mostly because of the opinion of the predecessor, which was astronomical. King of Italy, which is, I believe, one of our most powerful vassals, doesn't really like me that much, but he's okay with me. A lot of this is due to tech. Let's take a look at some of the guys that don't like me. The powerful King of Burgundy, the young King of Trebizond, the very powerful King of Castile, Kings of Poland and Bulgaria also don't like me, the King of Croatia and Pannonia doesn't like me. The Ecumenical Patriarch is never going to like me, but that's not something I can affect. So, let's go about fixing our problems. First of all, a good way to start and a good place to start is the Factions tab. In the Factions tab, you can sort of see who the problem is. I wouldn't recommend starting to deal with the problem here. You can just sort of visualize what the problem is, but don't start here just yet. Based on what we've seen from the opinion, and the opinion you just checked by mousing over, you'll notice that demesne being too big causes -20. That is a rather big problem. My stewardship is only 5. This puts my demesne at a bit of a iffy situation. Getting a wife, whose stewardship isn't that high to begin with, but her diplomacy is, should help that situation out. So let's get a wife. There we go. It increased it to 7 out of 8. Not bad. Let's see if we can't change it any other way. Well, we could centralize the realm a little bit more. And we do have enough support to do that. But it will lower my vassal limit, which I'm not a fan of at this point. Is there anything else we can do? Well, kind of. Let's see. For now, nothing. Okay? Now, I'm going to provide myself with a bit of a challenge here. I'm going to keep the domain limit the way it is. Because I've upgraded all these castles personally, and I want to keep them. Right? Can we keep our vassals happy with a domain limit like this? Yes, matter of fact, very easily. If as long as it's not too much over the limit. Put our focus on this capital right here, or on the capital rather, and take a look at the people that hate me the most. So, he is the leader of the Polish revolt. Let's ask him to surrender to the Polish revolt. He refused. Believe it or not, this is a good thing. If he had accepted, Poland would have been unified, and would have been unified under him, and he would have been somewhat grateful that I helped him out. So that's then sorted. But because he's still rebelling, that means that the King of Poland, technically the other King of Poland, is now a traitor. And as soon as this war ends, I have a good reason to imprison him. Of course, I don't think he's going to win the war considering the size of his domain, but we'll talk about that in a bit. We don't have the control over this situation. Moving on to the next one. The Ecumenical Patriarch, give up. Nothing's going to please him ever. The Duchess of Epirus. Why does she dislike me? Well, domain too big, opinion of predecessor was rather low. She's envious of me, I'm a foreigner, and I'm slothful. Right. Well, how can we improve the situation? Award her an honorary title of court musician. Is that going to help a lot? No, but this is a sort of every bit helps kind of situation. And that's when we sort of come across our very first way of pleasing vassals. Honorary titles are there to make them think highly of you, or a little bit higher of you for a few points. They have no other value. Okay, they do give them a little bit of prestige, they give them a little bit of monthly salary, they give them a little bit of... Actually, this one does give a lot of prestige because it's 2.4, which is not insignificant. But that's completely besides the point. Prestige doesn't matter in this situation. They're here to make them think better of you and to appreciate you more. So use honorary titles first before touching anything else. Again, in terms of managing vassals, and I seem to... This seems a bit, I don't know, maybe I'm out of touch with the average player, but this seems a little bit odd to me that this keeping track of vassals is the biggest problem for people. But what do I know? Ask and ye shall receive. You have asked, and I'm here to assist you. So, when picking someone for the position, bear in mind there are positions that will give you negative modifiers as well. Food taster is negative prestige and -5 opinion. So keep that in mind. And also court jester for Christians. Now, court poet, for example, that can be the King of Croatia. He has a -7 opinion of me, and he is a fairly powerful king, so we want him to like me. Is there anything else we can do? Well, we can buy a favor from him. We could send him a gift, send him an artifact. Don't do that, by the way. They're all yours. Keep them. Unless you have someone, unless you have like one artifact you really, really don't like. We can send him a gift. We have a lot of money. But that's about it. We can transfer vassals to him to make him more powerful. I disencourage using this as a means of improving opinion. Yes, I do. However, there is another way we can make him ever so slightly happier. The Duchy of Pest is de jure under his, or is supposed to be under his rule. Let's create it. And there's a bit of money gone to waste, but has it really? Well, not really. It's now under my control. You will notice that he hates me because of that, because, well, he desires the Duchy of Pest, and rightfully so, it should be his. Let's give him the Duchy of Pest. All of a sudden, he's loyal. Granting a duchy gives 60 opinion, and I've given him wind, essentially. That's a very useful trick you can do in... Again, it depends on you having a bit of money stored up. But it's a useful trick you can do. I've just sold him air, basically. I've given him what he already has. But I've given him now the official title of the Duchy of Pest, and now he's no longer a problem. Also, by the time the modifier for granted a duchy expires, I will have accumulated a little bit more diplomacy, a little bit more opinion of him, a longer reign, more money to deal with problems in the future, so on and so forth. So that's really not the issue here. Right. So, there. I don't recommend, however, giving them land that you own or giving them other vassals' lands in order to make them happy. You can certainly do this, and in a very tight situation, and in a problematic situation, you can absolutely do that without much in the way of issues. Later down the line, you can either revoke it, or it just sorts itself out. However, don't let this be your go-to tactic. There are other things you can do. What other things? Well, best show through examples. What about this mayor here, for example? Well, he's a mayor. He's not worth an honorary title or an artifact. To him, slight gift of gold will be more than enough. Here we have a leader of another revolt. Leaders of revolt you don't care about until they win. When they win, they become your problem. Until then, they are ghosts in the machine, right? The machine being the feudal system. Right, and now, all of a sudden, everyone doesn't really hate me. Right. But that doesn't serve us all too well. Let's imagine for a second that they did, because this is a good way of showing everything you can do. Let's imagine... Oh, hell, why imagine? That's a bit too much. I don't want to break my own Imperium. Do I have a... Ah, yes I do. Who's this? Kingdom of Burgundy. Anyone else? Perfect example. I'm going to imprison you. And then I'm going to release you. Two things I did there. First of all, I lowered his opinion of me enough so that I can demonstrate something else on his example, but I also released a prisoner. Now, this is gonna sound like a joke, but it's legitimate and it's completely true. If you have a rebellion, and let's be honest, most of you will, most of us even will, at one point have a rebellion. When that occurs, if you, let's say 100 vassals rebel against you, and in a feat of marital brilliance, a feat of martial brilliance, or marital brilliance if you have the proper allies, you manage to somehow beat the barons and dukes and greedy kings and whatnot in your empire, and imprison them all and win the revolt. If you execute 99 of them, or ransom 99 of them back, but release only one, you will be seen as a merciful and benevolent ruler. If you release 99 of them, but execute only one, the opinion will be exactly the same. Well, not of the ones that you executed, they'll be dead. And their sons will probably not really like you, but you get the idea. Everyone not related to them their opinion of you will be exactly the same. So, kill one guy or kill 100 people, it's pretty much the same thing. Release one guy from prison or release hundreds, pretty much the same thing. You don't get bonuses for releasing multiple people, but that is a very good thing you can do. If you have a righteous imprisonment of someone, especially if it's a low vassal like a count or a baron or something like that, imprison him and release him if he's not a problem. If he is, well, just keep him in jail. This is often a thing that people overlook. They go, well, I can't execute him because it will cost me piety and people will dislike me. I can't ransom him, he can't afford it. And releasing him, well, I can't do that. He's one of the major trouble, one of the people that causes the most trouble in the empire. We'll keep him in prison. And that's also an option. Keep disloyal vassals in prison. But again, we now really hate this guy for some reason. We really want to get rid of him. Why do we want to get rid of him? Well, the Duchy of Nicaea is supposed to be sort of like that, and yeah, you know what? We really dislike him. So let's say revoke Duchy, and it grieves him deeply, but he has revoked it. So there you go. Now he really hates me for artificial, fabricated reasons, but some people will not hate you for artificial reasons. So there you go. How do we deal with him? Murder. Murder is also an option. Do not be afraid to murder people. Also, just because it's not in the plot thing over here does not mean you cannot do that. So murder is an entirely valid option for killing disloyal vassals. My intrigue is terrible. My wife's intrigue is probably pretty bad too. But there's so many people in this Imperium. A lot of them are bound to hate him, and we don't need that many. So murder is a perfectly acceptable way of dealing with disloyal vassals. What is another perfectly good way of dealing with them? If they're not too powerful, revoking the title, giving it to someone else. We talked about this already. If they're not too powerful but annoying, which I'm going to do right now, bury them under another one, like this guy. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to give him the Duchy of Samos as well. There you go. So I've now revoked his title and put him under a different guy. He utterly despises his new liege, but I don't care. His problem. And now I have a ridiculously loyal vassal and stability in this area. Until the King of Anatolia decides to attack that place, but shush, that's not my concern either. Right. What about laws and stuff like that? Is that an option? Well, let's talk a little bit about it, even though I wanted to do this in a separate video. In terms of keeping vassals happy, laws don't do much. The realm laws are there to basically dictate how much control you have. The inheritance laws are, well, no points for guessing what they are for. Obligations we talked about. Council laws, no. Council laws, okay, let's begin with this. This is the ideal situation for council laws, always. Unless you want to conquer the world and you run out of vassal limit. In which case, you might want to decentralize a little bit and pass a few of these, just, in order to keep the empire whole. But even then, I would recommend having bigger vassals rather than having more of them. But in any case, in 99.9% of situations, this is the ideal council law layout. Unlike the one with obligations and, well, even inheritance, this one is fairly straightforward. You want an empowered council with no power. Sounds a bit paradoxical, right? Welcome to feudalism. Again, I mentioned this, pandering to your vassals' egos. You are a very powerful council, you have a lot of influence. What can you do? Nothing. That's the ideal situation. Why? An empowered council, gives you an advisor slot. Or 2 of them if you're an empire. This is good because you're going to have a lot of powerful vassals in an empire. You want to put them on the council to make them happy. As a result, having 2 advisor slots helps. Everything else, you obviously want to make the choice for yourself. rather than leaving it up to the council and their wishes. This is the ideal situation. When is it acceptable to move this, in terms of making your vassals happy? Only if you're facing a revolt, they bring you an ultimatum, and there is no way in hell that you're going to win that war. Again, if all other things are equal, you need to avoid situations like these at all costs, and everything we're learning today is to avoid situations like that, is to avoid rebellions and to avoid ultimatums. But if they do happen, then yes, accept the change from ruler declaration to council declaration or something like that. You can always revert it back when you have a more powerful leader, when you have a leader with better stats and a better political situation overall, I suppose. So let's take a look at other ways of making people happy. Well, gold is always a thing, right? What about marriage? Yes, marriage is also a thing that you can do. And it's not just any type of marriage. Let's say I have a brother or an uncle, and I want to marry him to her. Does that make any sense? Why would I do that? Well, behold. Behold, not yet. Needs to be related to the vassal himself. So your daughter. Let's say I betroth her to my younger brother, right here. Right. We already have a non-aggression pact with him. God damn it, Juggernaut, pay attention. Right, what about you? Form alliance. No. What about you? I have non-aggression pacts with most of my vassals, if you can believe that. Right, here you go. Your son. Arranged marriage between him. Terrible idea. No. That one. No. Am I sure I have an alliance with you? Let's do it like this. So, betrothal. And you. What do you think about that? Good. Oh, damn it, I'm gonna find someone, I swear. Not you. Not you. Not you. Ah, perfect. Betroth you to... oh, the half-brother. I have half-brothers to spare, evidently. There you go. This... finally! Okay, we found a good example. As you see, I've been doing this a little bit throughout the playthrough, so some of the non-aggression pacts have stuck. What was that? And I apologize for taking so long to find a good example of it. If you betroth one of your relatives to one of his children, you get the option to form a non-aggression pact. If they agree to it, this is very good. Obviously, if they have a really bad opinion of you, they're not going to agree to it. But if you have powerful vassals that are sort of on the fence, this is a good way of doing things too. Why? A non-aggression pact means that he cannot attack you. This makes sense, yes? Well, as you're about to find out, my marshal has been removed from all factions. Why? Being a part of the faction ultimately as a goal has to deliver an ultimatum. Either do this, or we rebel. How's he going to rebel if he has a treaty that says specifically he is not to rebel against me or fight me in any way, shape or form? Until he annuls that treaty, he can't do it. So, sign a treaty with one of your powerful vassals that are sort of on the fence, and you will remove them from this list. As you can see, a lot of vassals, or at least some of the vassals, will join factions even if they have a positive opinion of you. This is because, believe it or not, the number in front of you right now, and I probably should have mentioned this at the start of the video, but it often intimidates people and makes them, blows their mind a little bit. The opinion of the vassal towards you is not correct. It's not true. This number that you're seeing here is not real. I'm getting a bit of Vsauce Michael here. This number is a sort of representation, a mathematical representation of everything going on. This isn't necessarily how the vassal feels towards you. Ergo, this is why a vassal with 33 opinion of me has a low attitude towards me, let's say. The attitude and opinion are two different things. Attitude is invisible, opinion is a mathematical equation. This is why he's in a faction against me. Well, this one was 44 opinion. What does that mean? Well, let's take a look at the numbers themselves and see why. So I've released a prisoner, that's +9, that's temporary. That doesn't change his opinion that much. His opinion of you is mostly based on your traits and his traits. Your religion, his ethnicity, your ethnicity. Stuff like granting titles impacts it a lot because it gives them a lot of points in the opinion thing, so they will stay out of factions and be loyal towards you for that reason. But stuff like a scepter, technology, releasing a prisoner, changing a law, giving them an honorary title, stuff like that, they have a direct calculatable impact on the number, but his attitude towards you will not change. That's something to realize. Now, bearing in mind, this is not something you need to worry about. You keep the numbers high and their attitude will be good towards you regardless. It's just important to know that these numbers do not correlate one-to-one between attitude and opinion. You can't really change his opinion of you. I mean, you can work on getting better traits, but that's going to change the number anyway, right? So, bear in mind that that could be the reason why a particular vassal might choose to not help you in certain situations like events. He might choose to betray you, he might choose to imprison one of your children or murder one of your children. The numbers don't tell the full tale. It's rather realistic if you think about it, and is one of those things that I don't think a lot of people know about, and it hasn't been always the case. I think this is since last year-ish, towards the middle of last year that this was implemented, if memory serves. This wasn't the case always, but it is now, and it will forever be, until further notice in CK2. Now, that said, what other ways do we have of keeping vassals happy other than, you know, murdering them? I mentioned the imprisonment thing, and it is really a good idea. It's a 10 flat across the entire empire. That's very powerful. But there are other ways as well. Writing books is a good way to ensure the future of your kingdom. Because if you write a good book in diplomacy, it'll increase your diplomacy, ergo the opinion of everyone in the world will increase because you have a good book on diplomacy. Welcoming the Jews is just not worth it, too much gold. A smith, now depending on your DLC, again this may or may not work for you, paying a lot of money at one point when the kingdom is stable to get some fine jewelry, which is exactly what I've done here, is a good thing. Also, make sure to equip the weapons and all those things that you have once your character is moved on, again depending on your DLC. So, someone murdered my mother. You murdered my mother? Well, you're gonna die. Right. Sorry about that. A bit distracted. So your treasury actually helps here a little bit as well. Having a ceremonial robe increases my diplomacy. Having armor increases my survivability. But no, having a crown and a scepter also increases the opinion of your vassals. Obviously, if you have a vassal crisis right now, it's a little bit late to be, waving that scepter around. But if you're stable, you have a lot of money, it's a worthwhile investment for future's sake, right? Because the gold you have right now and the men you have right now are kind of temporary, whereas a scepter is more or less eternal. So, also, it's if you have the China DLC, the Jade Dragon DLC, Also, a good way to acquire these artifacts is to send eunuchs, like, why not one of my uncles, and artifacts and gifts and stuff like that to the Emperor of China and ask for artifacts in exchange, and they will give you some really nice stuff usually. Now, one more important thing of in terms of how to deal with rebellious vassals and how to deal with keeping them happy and managing all of them. Tournaments and grand feasts, depending on your culture, help a lot as well. Now, let's actually conduct a tournament considering we have the money. You'll notice a lot of these depend on you having quite a lot of money. It's a common theme. Money is basically how you deal with vassals, but we'll get to that in a bit. I need to be at peace in order to do that. Okay. Never mind. So, let's see. Who won this war? Is it still the, yeah. Okay. We'll, Actually, there's a topic for the next video. We'll work on getting a claim over here. So, I suppose we should also talk about when it is right for you to imprison your vassals. And there's a good example right here. No. Sorry, there's a good example right here. Speaking of Burgundy. So, I am illegally allowed to imprison the King of Burgundy because he seeks to kill someone, and, wait, it's not me, is it? No. He seeks to kill someone I know, and that gives me, he's a criminal, and that gives me reason to imprison him. In this situation, that's a terrible idea. First of all, because there's a 1% chance of me succeeding, which is, you should factor in, always, but he's not that disloyal, and he's not doing anything. So his opinion of me isn't the highest, but he's not in a faction, and he's only trying to assassinate a Duke of I don't care land. If you do care about what his plot is, just ask him to end it. Right? If he doesn't want to end it, then consider, do you really care that much about the plot? Or maybe he's trying to kill me or one of my sons. Well, in that case, go over to the plots, known plots, sort them by backers, and see how much power the plot has. And keep an eye out. Keep an eye out for it. If it gets to 70 or 80, yeah, ask him again, give him a gift, ask him again. If he's still refusing, imprison him. Wage a war over it if it's that important to you. But usually, you don't imprison them for that reason. Never imprison a vassal that you don't have just cause for. So, for example, the King of Croatia and Pannonia, I can imprison, or I can try to with 1%, but I have no reason to. So, everyone in the Empire will lower their opinion of me by 40. This will break your empire on the spot. Minus 40 to everyone in the Empire is devastating. And not even a 6-year veteran can save you out of that shithole that you drag yourself in. Because that is utterly devastating. You can probably win the rebellion war if you're really good. And honestly speaking, I think I could probably win the rebellion war afterwards, simply because I hold Constantinople and 2,000 ducats, I can recruit all the mercenaries I want. But it's just terrible. It's terrible. Never do that. If you have a good reason to, do it. Another way is if you really hate someone, they might appear in the My Plots area. Now, you can kill them, yes, that is one of the plots, but a possible plot, also depending on the situation and the context, is to imprison him or to revoke his county, duchy, whatever. If you do it through a plot, you basically bypass all the negatives of doing it directly, apart from the opinion, a loss of the person who is victim, or the person who is the victim of you stripping them of their title. And the person that is stripped of their title, he will hate you, but the other modifiers and opinions, you sort of bypass them. So do it through here, if you want to remove a particular vassal from power that's being troublesome and rebellious. Right. What else can you do? As you may notice, there is quite a few things that you can actually do. Because CK2 is a game about managing vassals, right? Everything else is sort of there for one reason or another, and war is obviously a fundamental pillar of the entire thing. But if you were to if someone were to ask me what CK2 is about, it's about building a dynasty in a medieval kingdom and keeping your vassals happy. Everything else is sort of added features. Yes, including war, believe it or not. So, what's another way of keeping your vassals happy? Well, technology. Trouble is, you can't really do much about it. Yes, councillors can spread technology. Yes, universities help. But realistically, it's not that good. There is something that councillors can do, though, specifically the Chancellor, that might be very helpful for you. If you have a particular vassal that dislikes you and is very powerful, case in point, the guy in Burgundy. Juggernaut, he doesn't hate you. I know. But let's imagine that he does. And besides, his opinion of me is kind of low. I would like more taxes and men from him. Improve diplomatic relationships. This works on anyone on the map. Do it with the vassal in question. Now this, again, I will draw attention to how to keep track of all these things. So we talked about the council, and we said that we want good stats on our councillors, but we also want them to be powerful vassals within the council so as to make them loyal. Make them not hate us because they're not in the council. Right, so, how to keep track of this? Well, first of all, through the ledger over here, identify the vassal that is the problem. For example, this guy, leader of the Blakian Revolt. Clicking on him, or clicking on his title here and then clicking on Go To, will give you, will zoom on the map to where he is. You then find his capital, usually indicated by, you know, his emblem. There's his emblem, you find it on the map. There's his emblem, right. Now, grab your councillor and plop it right on top of his capital. That's it. That's how you track them down, that's how you find them. Again, not to brag or anything, again, I may have lost touch with people on this, but this seems a bit easy and obvious to me, but I've received dozens of questions, quite literally like a dozen questions about how to keep track of vassals. That's how you do it. Just through here, find the problem, locate the problem, click on the problem until it goes away. That's basically it. Right, so, I believe I've covered the basics. Are there more ways of keeping your vassals happy? Well, kind of. For example, if I go on a Hajj to Mecca, of course the war has to end before that, or the wars, but if I go on a Hajj to Mecca, that will give me the Pilgrim trait, which will increase everyone's opinion of me by +5, I think. Bear in mind, stuff like this builds up over time. 5 from Pilgrim, 2 from Diplomacy, 3 from Technology, 5 from the Scepter, 9 from releasing a prisoner. This stacks on top of each other, and before you know it, you did what, at this point in sort of viewing at it right now, seems like a trivial thing. I went on a pilgrimage, gave me +5 opinion with everyone. Whoop-de-hoo, right? But when you do all the little things, and you assign the honorary titles to the proper places, and you remove, quote-unquote, problematic vassals, either by burying them, killing them, revoking titles, stuff like that, you will notice that if we ignore the 2 revolts, your vassal's tab will look like this. Bearing in mind, we started with more than half of them having a negative opinion of me, and we fixed it within a matter of, what, 2 months. But more importantly, we made sure they won't be a rebellion. Why? Well, he loves me and has a non-aggression pact with me. Non-aggression pact, we're improving relations with him. Non-aggression pact, non-aggression pact. Gave him the Duchy of Pest, so he loves me. Is on revolt, so he can't really act on anything. And there you go. Everyone the only people that remain in the council or sorry, the only people that remain in the factions are people that are going to go away soon, and I'll just, whoops, sorry about that, and I will, I will demonstrate this in a second. Sure, well, we'll join the Satanist cult, that's fine. Stubborn little bastards, eh? I was sort of expecting him to leave the, thing. Okay. There you go. Gold. Gold tends to help. Shower them with money and they will love you. There you go. Done! We've just cleared the factions tab. Isn't that lovely? Now, what about if you fail? Now, what about when you fail? Well, I covered war already in a video once, and I recommend, if you haven't seen that video, I recommend you go and check it out, because it will give you a pretty damn good idea of how to wage wars more effectively, when to assault provinces and when to not assault them, how to siege, so on and so forth. It will give you, you know, I think it's fairly useful and helpful for newer players. If you do get a rebellion, the war is just like any other, really. Your vassals pop up, your loyal vassals stay loyal, and instead of fighting an outside enemy, you're fighting half of your country, usually. The rule with mercenaries applies. If you need them, they're here for you. Terrain applies, leadership applies, assaulting places, that applies too. Bearing in mind that when you get a revolt, your first priority is to assemble all your troops together, because, demonstration purposes, this is how your country's going to look. Now imagine half of these armies were red. They're scattered all over the place. Your tactic is to gather as many of them as possible in one location before your enemy does. Cut off your rebellious vassals, beat them in detail, right? Defeat them in detail, kind of like Napoleon in Italy. Assemble a strong force, fight their weaker forces individually, and you'll pretty soon find out that even if potentially you have a smaller army on paper than they do, you've managed to gather your forces unlike them, so you're the one that ends up winning the war. There you go. That sound good? Right. Is there any other way of making your vassals happy? Well, titles I've talked about, council I've talked about, laws I've talked about, technology, intrigue. No, I don't think so. Pretty sure this is it. Well, there is one way. Let's do the seduction focus. Let's say, and I believe I have this somewhere. Ah, you. There you go. You're 50. You're not ideal seduction and marriage material. Don't get me wrong, for purely gameplay purposes, of course. But let's say this person here didn't absolutely adore me, and rather quite the opposite, hated me. What can we do about that then? Well, if your liege, your ruler is homosexual, or the vassal is of the other gender, use him or her. That's also an option. It's exotic, it's rare, it's not something that's the go-to plan, per se, but hey, you know what I say? If it's stupid but it works, all of a sudden it's not stupid anymore, is it? So, there we go. Is there any other way of keeping your vassals happy? Well, not really, but there are things you might want to not do. For example, if a vassal dislikes you, or even if he really likes you or is on the fence, check his opinion by mousing over this thing. Just check. Because here you'll find very useful information about what you can change and what you can't. For example, being a foreigner and being slothful, I can't change. I can reduce the foreigner penalty by increasing the tolerance tech, but nah, that's not great. Takes a lot of time and not something I can do immediately. However, if, for example, I were to hold Nicomedia, and he is the Duke of Nicomedia, he will desire Nicomedia from me. His opinion, and pretty much everyone who holds the Duchy of Nicomedia that's not me, their opinion of me will be severely cut and reduced due to the fact that I hold a piece of their land, or a piece of land that should be theirs. Don't do that. Never do that. Organize your personal demesne. Demesne, goddammit, it's been demesne for the last 6 years. So that you hold the duchy, the de jure duchy, everything in it under your personal control, and yeah, within it you hold towns and castles and stuff like that. Kind of like this. This is perfect. 3 counties, buildings and castles and mosques inside the 3 counties. De jure mine, no one to contest it. There you go. Another thing, kind of important. This will happen occasionally, and it might confuse new players as to why it's happening. Matter of fact, I think it happened right here. So, we see that the Duke of Zaragoza, de jure, belongs to the Kingdom of Anatolia. But he broke off. Why? Maybe he had a rebellion, maybe it passed out of the kingdom by inheritance, which can happen. Maybe it's magic, right? For whatever reason, he is now outside of the Duchy of Anatolia, and he is my vassal directly. Even though I'm not personally involved in controlling any land here, the King of Anatolia is not going to like that. Now, the problem is, he has quite a lot of land and he desires the Empire Hispania. If I give it to him, he's really going to hate. I mean, he's going to become independent, which is not something we want. So it might be a good idea to break his land up a little bit, but Vassal Limit is preventing me from doing that. There are certain situations, though, in which he will have the negative opinion, for example, desires Duchy of Zaragoza. But Zaragoza isn't under your control, is it? Yes, but it's under the control of your direct vassal. He doesn't want the duchy from you, he wants the vassal. Right, so he doesn't want the title, he wants the vassal under his control. This is pretty much the same thing. If they desire it, give it to them. Right? Because the desire thing is not personal greed. The desire thing is legitimate, real, tangible, and justified grievances. So in this case, I wanted to transfer the Duchy of Barcelona to him. That'd be alright with him, basically. Obviously this belongs under the Duchy of Aquitaine, and I think I can transfer this guy to you. No? In which case he rebelled against his legion, I can't transfer him back for now, but besides he doesn't desire him. If he did, I could transfer it. It doesn't desire this duchy. If he did, I could transfer it over. But there you go, that's one thing to sort of avoid in the entire situation. Brilliant. Is there anything else? Well, inevitably, yes. But I think I've covered everything you need to know in terms of keeping vassals happy as a general principle. Here's the problem with this video and possibly one of the few, one of the next few ones that I'm going to do. A lot of this stuff is 80% situational. I intend on doing a video with inheritance in the future and how to expand your kingdom by not waging wars but by simply marrying the right people. Again, this particular video will be 95% situational, right? However, there are basic principles that apply. There are basic ideas and things that work in practice that you can do in every situation should you meet the requirements. In most situations, that's money. If you have money, you can create a duchy. If you have money, you can gift it to a vassal to keep them happy. Stuff like that. This is stuff that works for every campaign, every culture, every religion, every nation, every start, every timeline. These are the very foundations and the basics. If you have specific problems, analyze it, Look at the numbers will tell you everything, and try and fix it. Murder is always an option, I keep saying that. There will be people in the Empire that will despise you, no matter what you do. Murder those people. Feel free to. Even if you get caught, you know, it's not the end of the world. A known murderer negative modifier is -10 across the board. Releasing a prisoner is +10 across the board. It evens out. Let's now talk about, again, tournaments, feasts, fairs, regalia, traits, diplomacy, all those things. So yeah, it's easy. It's easy if you know what the problem is and you know how to deal with it and you know these basic principles. You really shouldn't have that much of a problem with rebellions. But if you do, remember that it's normal. It's normal for a rebellion to occasionally happen. Just don't take it personally. Release one of the vassals always because of the opinion buff. And yeah, there you go. Actually, rebellions can be a good good source of money as well. So it really, just don't panic above anything else. Just don't panic and analyze things thoroughly, and just keep you calm, keep you cool, and you'll make it through any scenario in any situation. Right, there we go. That will be about it for keeping vassals happy, ladies and gentlemen. Please remember, if you have any questions about a specific game mechanic regarding keeping vassals happy and their opinion of you, if you have any questions regarding anything of the sorts, specific traits, specific things which I will not get into in this video, but one of the examples is adopting one of the schools if you're a Muslim character. This will give members of the opposite school a -25 opinion of you, or a -10. It used to be -25, I'm not sure what the numbers are right now. For this specific thing, I recommend not embracing any of the schools. It's not worth it. It's really not worth it. I never embrace any of them unless I have a really good character or I want to deal with rebellions and disloyal vassals. And because in this situation, everyone loves me, right? I can challenge myself a little bit by embracing one of these. Why? No real reason. I mean, now he's going to hate me slightly more, and well, on the other hand, people that have the same school as I do will like me slightly more, but there you go, right? Now he dislikes me, so I need to deal with him and kind of send him a gift of gold, or plot to kill him, or whatever. There you go. You can challenge yourselves in those situations, but in terms of just sheer keeping them happy, that is a good example of something that you just don't choose. There are decisions that you will also be able to make, events that will fire that will help you increase the opinion of someone. Those are really specific things, though, that I won't get into. I want to give you the very basics and the core ideas of how to keep your vassals happy. Remember, little things add up, big things, and yeah, just mouse over the problem and identify it. Knowing is not half the battle, knowing is 90% of the battle when it comes to keeping people happy. There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching this video. Again, if you have any questions about anything I talked about, or any specifics, please feel free to answer. Well, yeah, feel free to answer, but feel free to ask them more importantly, down in the comments below, and I will read through every single comment as I do on all my videos, and I will try to give you the best possible answer to the best of my abilities. My name has been Juggernaut. Like and subscribe down below if you enjoyed this video. It helps the channel out a ton, and I'll see you next time. Have fun, take care, enjoy CK2, and bye-bye.